Nah, 3 sentences. That is all it took to burn a 7-year marriage to the ground. You think you know the person sleeping next to you? You think the father of your child is your protector? Odetta Bennett thought so too, but at 2 a.m., holding a feverish 3-week-old baby, the static crackle of a forgotten baby monitor revealed a truth so dark it didn't just break her heart, it endangered her life. When her husband, David, whispered to his mistress that she was his real family, he didn't know Odetta was listening. And he certainly didn't know that by sunrise his house would be empty, his bank accounts frozen, and his deepest secrets were about to be exposed. This isn't just a divorce story. This is a survival story. The silence of the house at 2:14 a.m. was heavy, the kind that presses against your eardrums. In the master bedroom of the colonial-style house on 42nd Avenue in Seattle, Odetta Bennett sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes burning with the grit of sleep deprivation. Her son, Leo, was only 3 weeks old. He was a tiny, fragile thing, swaddled tightly in a muslin blanket printed with little gray elephants. He had finally settled down after 2 hours of colicky screaming, his breathing now a rhythmic, raspy puff against the silence. Odetta rubbed her temples. Her body felt alien to her aching, stitched, swollen, and leaking. She looked at the empty space on the king-size bed next to her. The sheets were pristine. David wasn't there. Again. Working late on the Henderson account, he had texted at 7:07 p.m. "Don't wait up. The partners are riding me hard." He had followed up at 10 p.m. Odetta reached for her water bottle on the nightstand, her hand brushing against the plastic casing of the baby monitor. It was an older model, a VTech audio-only unit that her sister, Maggie, had handed down to her. They had a fancy video system installed, but the Wi-Fi had been glitchy all week, so David had dug this ancient relic out of the garage just as a backup. She realized she had left the receiver unit on the bathroom counter earlier when she was trying to take a shower while Leo napped. She hadn't turned the base unit off in the nursery down the hall. She stood up, her knees popping, and walked into the ensuite bathroom to splash cold water on her face. The receiver was sitting there on the marble vanity, emitting a low, static hum. Shh! Odetta reached out to click it off. She needed sleep, not white noise. But then the static broke. Clack. It was the distinct sound of a door opening. Odetta froze, her hand hovering over the device. The nursery door? No. Leo was in the bassinet right next to her bed in the master bedroom. The base unit for the monitor wasn't in the nursery. David had moved it to his home office downstairs earlier that morning to test the range, and must have forgotten to unplug it. The sound was coming from the study. "I know, baby. I know it's late." The voice was unmistakable. It was David, the rich, baritone voice that had charmed her 7 years ago at a coffee shop in Pioneer Square. The voice that had vowed to love her in sickness and in health. Odetta's heart hammered against her ribs, a painful, erratic rhythm. He was home? Why hadn't he come upstairs? Why was he whispering? She leaned closer to the grainy speaker, her breath held tight in her chest. She's asleep. Or passing out. She's a mess right now, honestly. "It's like living with a zombie," David said. His tone wasn't affectionate. It was dismissive. Cold. A pause, then a woman's voice, tinny and distorted through the speaker, but clear enough to make out the words. It was on speakerphone. "David, I'm tired of waiting. You said once the baby came, things would be different. You said we could stop hiding." Odetta gripped the edge of the vanity so hard her knuckles turned white. The woman's voice was smooth, confident. "Young. Jessica, listen to me," David urged, his voice dropping an octave, intimate and soothing. "I just need a few more weeks to get the assets moved. If I leave now, the courts will slaughter me. You know how the laws are in Washington. I have to play the supportive husband a little longer." Tears welled in Odetta's eyes, hot and stinging. "Jessica, Jessica Vaughan. The new paralegal at his firm, the one with the chestnut hair and the bright, eager eyes who had come to their Christmas party. The one who had complimented Odetta's dress while smiling just a little too widely at David. "I don't care about the money, David. I want you. I want us," Jessica whined. "I know," David said, and what he said next would haunt Odetta until the day she died. The words seemed to physically strike her, harder than any blow. "Look, Jessica, Odetta, she's just the mother of my child. That's biology. But you get me. You understand the vision, you and me. That's where my life is. You're my real family. This up here is just an obligation I have to manage. Real family." The world tilted. The bathroom tiles seemed to rush up towards her. Odetta gagged, a violent reflex of disgust and shock. An obligation. He was talking about her. He was talking about Leo. Leo, who was 10 feet away, sleeping in a bassinet, barely existing in the world for 20 days, and his father was already dismissing him as a burden to be managed. "I'll be over in an hour," David whispered. "I just need to make sure she doesn't wake up and wonder where I am. I'll tell her I had to go back to the office for a briefing." Click. The line went dead. The static returned. Shh. Zzz. Odetta stared at the plastic device. She felt like she was drowning. The man she had built a life with, the man she had just endured 30 hours of labor for, was downstairs plotting to liquidate their assets and abandon them. He wasn't just cheating, he was liquidating. Get the assets moved. A cold clarity washed over her. It replaced the tears instantly. This wasn't just heartbreak. This was a heist. He was planning to leave her penniless with a newborn. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. She looked tired. She looked worn out. But beneath the dark circles, she saw something else ignite. It was the primal, terrifying rage of a mother whose child has been threatened. She wiped her face. She didn't sob. She didn't scream. She walked out of the bathroom and looked at the clock. 2:19 a.m. He said he would leave in an hour. She had 60 minutes. Odetta moved with the terrifying precision of a soldier in enemy territory. She knew David's routine perfectly. If he was in the study working, he would have his noise-cancelling headphones on while he waited for the right time to leave, or he would be in the shower in the guest bath downstairs to wash off the office smell before seeing his mistress. She needed to be quiet. She grabbed the large duffel bag from the top shelf of the closet. She didn't pack clothes for herself, only the essentials. Underwear, socks, 2 pairs of leggings, a hoodie. Everything else was replaced by Leo's needs. Diapers, wipes, formula, bottles. The breast pump. She moved to the safe in the back of the walk-in closet. Her hands trembled as she punched in the code 0824. Their anniversary. Error. She paused. He had changed it. Panic flared in her chest, hot and bright. Of course he changed it. If he was moving assets, he wouldn't want her seeing the cash reserves they kept for emergencies. She closed her eyes. Think. Jessica. What would he change it to? David was arrogant, but he wasn't creative. She tried Jessica's birthday. No, she didn't know it. She tried the date of the Christmas party. No. She tried the last 4 digits of his cell phone. She took a deep breath. She looked at the keypad. The numbers were worn. 1, 2, 3, 4. She typed it in. Beep. The door swung open. She almost laughed out loud. The arrogance of the man. He thought so little of her intelligence that he changed the code to the factory default, assuming she'd never even try to look. Inside, there was an envelope containing $4,000 in cash their earthquake fund. She took it. She took her passport. She took Leo's birth certificate, which had just arrived in the mail 2 days ago. She grabbed the hard drive that sat next to the cash. She didn't know what was on it, but she knew David backed up his laptop to it every Friday. If he was moving money, The trail was on that drive. She zipped the bag. 2:45 a.m. She needed to get Leo. This was the dangerous part. If Leo cried, David would hear. If David came upstairs and saw the bag, it was over. He was a lawyer, a partner at Holloway and Associates. He knew how to spin a narrative. If she tried to leave and he caught her, he could claim she was having a postpartum psychotic break. He could take Leo. He would paint her as unstable. She couldn't let him see her. She crept to the bassinet. Leo was stirring. She gently placed a pacifier in his mouth and lifted him, keeping him swaddled tight. He let out a small whimper. Odetta froze. Downstairs, floorboards creaked. She stopped breathing. She heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy. Deliberate. He was coming up. Odetta looked around frantically. She couldn't hide the bag. She was standing in the middle of the room, holding the baby and a duffel bag. She threw the bag onto the floor on the far side of the bed, kicking it under the dust ruffle. She sat down on the bed, pulled her shirt down, and positioned Leo as if she were nursing him. The door handle turned. David walked in. He was wearing fresh clothes, a crisp white button-down and jeans. He smelled of cologne. Santal 33. The scent he wore on their first date. He paused when he saw her awake. For a split second, a look of annoyance flashed across his handsome face, but it was instantly replaced by a mask of concern. "Hey," he whispered, walking over. "Is he not sleeping?" Odetta looked down at Leo. She couldn't look David in the eye. If she did, she would claw his face off. "Colic," she said, her voice raspy. It wasn't hard to fake sounding exhausted. He just woke up. David sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry, babe. I hate that you have to do this alone tonight. I have to head back to the office." There it was. "The lie, now?" Odetta asked, keeping her eyes on the baby. "It's 3 a.m. Crisis with the merger." David lied smoothly. "Sterling called. I have to go handle the paperwork or the deal falls through. I'll probably just crash on the couch in my office for a few hours so I can wake you when I get back." He leaned down to kiss her forehead. Odetta flinched internally, her skin crawling as his lips touched her. He smelled like betrayal. "You're a good mom, Odetta," he said. It sounded rehearsed. "Go back to sleep." He turned and walked out. Odetta waited. She counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3. She heard his footsteps go down the hall, down the stairs, the beep of the alarm system being disarmed, the front door opening, the front door closing, the lock engaging. She rushed to the window. She watched as his black Audi SUV backed out of the driveway and sped off down Maplewood Drive, heading toward the city, toward Jessica. She didn't collapse. She didn't cry. The adrenaline in her veins was turning into cold, hard steel. She grabbed the duffel bag from under the bed. She put Leo into his car seat carrier, strapping him in with trembling hands. "We're going on an adventure, Leo," she whispered. She went downstairs. She didn't take her car. Her Volvo had a GPS tracker on it connected to David's phone app for safety. She went to the kitchen drawer and grabbed the spare keys to the old Ford pickup truck they kept for gardening and hauling lumber. It was a 2010 model. No GPS. No OnStar. She scribbled a note on the kitchen counter. She thought about writing a novel. She thought about screaming at him in ink. Instead, she wrote 3 words. "I heard you." She left her wedding ring on top of the note. At 3:15 a.m., the rusty engine of the Ford roared to life. Odetta Bennett backed out of the driveway, the headlights cutting through the fog. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she was never coming back. As she turned onto the main road, she dialed a number. "Hello," a groggy voice answered. "Maggie," Odetta said, her voice finally breaking. "I need you. I'm coming to Oregon." "Odetta, what's wrong?" "It's 3 a.m. David has a mistress. He's liquidating our accounts. He called Leo. He called Leo an obligation. Silence on the other end. Then, the sound of movement. Drive, Maggie said, her voice turning to iron. Don't stop for gas until you're at least 50 miles out. I'm calling Uncle Ray. He's a retired forensic accountant. If David is moving money, we're going to find it before he wakes up. Odetta hung up and pressed her foot to the gas. She looked at Leo in the rearview mirror. You are not an obligation, she vowed to the darkness. You are my son, and we are going to burn his world down. The sun was just beginning to bleed a pale, watery grey through the morning mist when David turned the Audi back onto his driveway. It was 6:15 a.m. He felt good. Tired, but good. He and Jessica had spent the last 3 hours going over the plan. They had opened a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands under the name Vaughan Consulting. By Monday, he would initiate the transfer of his 401k, the joint savings, and the equity from the house which he planned to sell quietly to a developer friend into that account. He would serve Odetta with divorce papers on Friday afternoon, claiming irreconcilable differences, and offer her a pitiful settlement that he would bully her into accepting. He parked the car and checked his reflection in the rearview mirror. He rubbed the lipstick smudge off his neck. He practiced tears. Tired but dedicated husband face. He unlocked the front door. The house was silent. Perfect. She was still asleep. He walked into the kitchen to start the coffee maker. He needed the smell of coffee to permeate the house, a sensory prop for his alibi. I've been up for hours, honey, working. He reached for the canister of coffee grounds, but his hand stopped mid-air. On the granite island, usually cluttered with burp cloths and mail, there was nothing but a single sheet of notepad paper and a small, glittering object. David frowned. He walked closer. The object was a diamond ring, a 1.5-carat princess-cut satin platinum. He had bought it 7 years ago, sweating through his shirt at the jeweler's, terrified she would say no. Now, it sat there like a piece of debris. He picked up the note. His eyes scanned the 3 words written in Odetta's looping, familiar handwriting. I heard you. David felt the blood drain from his face so fast it made him dizzy. The silence of the house suddenly transformed from peaceful to predatory. I heard you. He dropped the note and sprinted up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. Odetta, he shouted, abandoning the whisper. Odetta. He burst into the master bedroom. The bed was made, but the duvet was lumpy. He ripped it back. Pillows. Just pillows arranged to look like a body. He spun around to the bassinet. Empty. No baby. No blankets. No, 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 David muttered, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps. He ran to the closet. The safe. He punched in 1, 2, 3, 4. The door swung open. Empty. The cash was gone. The hard drive was gone. The hash was gone. The hard drive was gone. David fell to his knees. The hard drive. It wasn't just family photos on that drive. It was the ledger. It was the digital paper trail of every illegal wire transfer he had facilitated for his special clients at the firm. The reason he had so much cash to hide in the first place. If Odetta looked at the photos, she'd see memories. If she or anyone else looked at the spreadsheets buried in the system folders, he was looking at 20 years in federal prison. He scrambled for his phone. He opened the tracking app for the Volvo. The blue dot appeared instantly. It was pinging right here, in the garage. She hadn't taken her car. He ran to the window. The driveway was empty where the old Ford truck usually sat. The one vehicle he hadn't bothered to put a tracker on because it was a piece of junk. He dialed Jessica. David, I just saw you, she answered, her voice sleepy and seductive. She knows, David barked, his voice cracking. She's gone. She took the kid. She took the cash. And Jessica, she took the cash. And Jessica, she took the drive. Silence on the other end. Then the seduction vanished. Her voice turned into a whip. You idiot, you told me that drive was encrypted. It is, but the password, it's the same as the safe. And let me guess, Jessica hissed. The password is something stupid like 1234. David didn't answer. Find her, David, Jessica commanded. I don't care about the baby. I don't care about the baby, but if that drive gets to the police, we are finished. Fix this. 300 miles south, the Oregon coastline was battered by rain. Odetta pulled the rattling Ford truck onto a gravel driveway that wound through a dense thicket of pine trees. At the end of the road sat a log cabin that looked like a fortress. Smoke curled from the chimney. Odetta killed the engine. Her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't unbuckle her seatbelt. She had driven for 6 hours straight, stopping only once to feed Leo in the cab of the truck at a desolate rest stop. The front door of the cabin flew open. A woman in a thick wool cardigan ran out into the rain. Maggie. Odetta opened the door and practically fell out. Maggie caught her. I've got you, Maggie said, her voice fierce. I've got you. Odetta couldn't speak. She just pointed to the back seat where Leo was sleeping in his carrier. Maggie nodded, grabbing the baby while Odetta grabbed the duffel bag containing the hard drive. Inside, the cabin was warm. A fire roared in the stone hearth. Sitting at the heavy oak dining table was a man who looked like he had been carved out of the same granite as the coastline. Uncle Ray. Ray wasn't really their uncle. He was their father's cousin, a man who had spent 30 years as a forensic auditor for the IRS before retiring to fish and drink whiskey. He had eyes that missed nothing and a patience that terrified people. Is that it? Ray asked, nodding at the duffel bag. He didn't offer a hug. He offered a solution. Odetta nodded. She placed the black external hard drive on the table. He's moving money, Odetta said, her voice raspy from crying. He's leaving us for a woman named Jessica Vaughn. He called Leo an obligation, but Ray, he was terrified of this drive. I saw it in his eyes when he used to talk about it. It's not just savings. Ray took a sip of black coffee. He pulled a laptop towards him. Plug it in. Odetta connected the drive. A password prompt appeared. Try 1234, Odetta said bitterly. Ray typed it. The drive unlocked. Amateur, Ray grunted. He began clicking through folders, photos, tax returns, boring, wait. He opened a folder labeled System Config. It should have contained driver files. Instead, it contained 32 Excel spreadsheets and a folder of PDF bank statements. Ray opened one. He adjusted his glasses. He leaned in closer to the screen. The silence in the room stretched for a full minute. Odetta, Ray said quietly. How much does David make a year? About 300,000. Maybe 4 with bonuses. Ray turned the screen toward her. This account in the Cayman Islands. It has $4 million in it, and the deposits aren't coming from his salary. They're coming from Holloway and Associates client escrow accounts. He's skimming. No, he's not skimming. He's draining them. Odetta gasped. He's stealing from his clients. He's embezzling, Ray corrected. And he's laundering it through a shell company called Vaughn Consulting. Odetta felt the room spin. Vaughn. Jessica Vaughn. Felt the room spin. Vaughn. Jessica Vaughn. She's not just his mistress, Maggie whispered, looking over Odetta's shoulder. She's his accomplice. Or, Ray said, his eyes narrowing as he opened another file. She's his handler. Back in Seattle, David was tearing his house apart. He was looking for clues, a diary, a post-it note, anything that would tell him where Odetta had gone. He was frantic. He had called her parents in Ohio. They hadn't heard from her. He called her friends. No one picked up. He was standing in the middle of the nursery, kicking a pile of stuffed animals when his doorbell rang. He froze. Police. He walked to the door and peered through the peephole. It wasn't the police. It was Jessica. She looked different than she did at the office or in the dim light of hotel rooms. Standing on his porch in the harsh light of day, wearing a trench coat and oversized sunglasses, she looked sharp. Dangerous. David opened the door. "What are you doing here?" The neighbors. "Shut up, David," she said, pushing past him. She walked into the living room, her heels clicking loudly on the hardwood. She looked around with a sneer. "So this is the domestic bliss you were so eager to escape. Jessica, you can't be here. Odetta took the drive. If she figures out what's on it." "She's a stay-at-home mom, David," Jessica scoffed, picking up a framed wedding photo and examining it with disdain. "She's thinking about diapers and feeding schedules. She's probably crying in a motel room somewhere hoping you'll call and apologize. She won't look at the spreadsheets. You don't know her. She's smart, and she took the cash." Jessica turned to him. "Then we accelerate. We move the rest of the funds today. All of it. We drain the firm's operating account." "We can't," David said, sweating. "That will trigger alerts. I need another week to bypass the dual signature requirement." Jessica stepped closer to him. She placed a hand on his chest. It should have been comforting, but her fingernails dug into his shirt. "David, listen to me. We are leaving for the Caymans tonight. I booked the flight. You are going to go to the office, authorize the transfer using Sterling's override code, which I know you stole, and then we go to the airport. Forget the house. Forget the divorce. We take the $4 million and we vanish." David hesitated. This was moving too fast. He wanted a divorce, a new life, yes. But becoming a fugitive? I have a son," he stammered. Jessica's eyes went cold. "You said he was an obligation. Do you want to be a father to a screaming brat, or do you want to be a father to a screaming brat, or do you want to be a king on a beach with me? Choose, David. Right now, because if you don't choose me, I'm walking out that door and you can explain to the partners why there are discrepancies in the ledger." It was a threat. A blackmail threat. David realized with a sinking feeling that he wasn't entirely in control, but looking at Jessica, her beauty, the promise of freedom, the adrenaline, he made his choice. "Okay," he said. "I'll do it. Tonight." In the cabin in Oregon, Ray was typing furiously. "I've tracked the IP addresses used to access the offshore accounts," Ray said. "Most of them are from David's laptop. But the account setup? The initial creation of Vaughn Consulting? It wasn't done in Seattle." "Where was it done?" Odetta asked. She was reading Leo, the normalcy of the act clashing with the high-stakes forensic investigation happening at the table. "It was done in Chicago," Ray said. 6 months ago. Odetta, was David in Chicago 6 months ago? No. Odetta shook her head. He hasn't traveled for work in a year. Then who is Jessica Vaughn? Maggie asked. Ray opened a new browser tab. He didn't search for Jessica Vaughn. He searched for the incorporation documents of the shell company. He found the registered agent. The company is registered to a J.V. Sterling. Sterling, Odetta frowned. That's the name of the senior partner at David's firm, Arthur Sterling. Maybe she's his daughter, Maggie suggested. No, Odetta said, her mind racing. Arthur has 3 sons, no daughters. Ray kept digging. He ran a facial recognition search using a photo of Jessica that Odetta had found on David's iPad earlier. He uploaded the photo to a reverse image search engine. Dozens of hits popped up, but none of them said Jessica Vaughn. One link was a news article from Chicago dated 2 years ago. The Black Widow of Banking. Hunt continues for con artist who drained 2 meals from tech CEO. Ray clicked the link. The photo was unmistakable. It was Jessica, but the caption read, "Police are looking for Vanessa Kinsley, 28, wanted for fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft." Odetta read the article aloud, her voice trembling. Kinsley targets mid-level executives with access to company finances. She seduces them, convinces them to embezzle funds into accounts she controls, and then vanishes with the money, leaving the men to take the fall. Odetta looked up at Ray. She's not in love with him, Odetta whispered. She's not in love with him, Odetta whispered. She's not his real family. He's a mark. She's going to steal everything and leave him to go to prison. He deserves it, Maggie spat. He does, Odetta agreed. She looked down at Leo. But if he goes to prison for embezzlement, the government seizes his assets. They seize our assets, the house, the college fund, everything. If she steals that money, Leo and I are left with nothing but debt and a scandal. Odetta stood up. The fear was gone. The shock was gone. We have to stop the transfer, Odetta said. How? Ray asked. We're 300 miles away, and you can't call the police without implicating David. Odetta looked at the phone. She looked at the hard drive. I don't need to call the police, Odetta said, her eyes hardening. I need to call the one person David is more afraid of than the police. Who? Arthur Sterling. His boss. That's suicide, Ray warned. Sterling will have David arrested immediately. Not if I make a deal, Odetta said. I have the hard drive. I have the proof. I can give Sterling his money back before it disappears to the Caymans. But I need to buy time. She picked up a phone. I'm not calling David, she said. I'm calling her. You're calling the Mistress? Maggie asked, eyes wide. I'm calling the con artist, Odetta corrected. She thinks she's playing a lonely wife. She's about to find out she's playing a mother. Odetta dialed the number she had seen on the phone bill logs. It rang twice. Hello? Jessica's voice answered, crisp and irritated. Hello, Vanessa, Odetta said. There was a dead silence on the line. I know who you are, Odetta continued, her voice steady and cold. I know about Chicago. I know about the alias, and I know you're trying to move $4 million today. Who is this? Jessica's voice lost its composure. It dropped to a low growl. This is the obligation, Odetta said, and if you don't want the FBI waiting for you at the airport, you're going to do exactly what I say. The silence on the phone line was heavy, filled only with the faint hum of the connection between Oregon and Seattle. You're bluffing, Jessica Vanessa said finally. Her voice had lost its sultry edge. It was now sharp, calculating. You're a housewife. You don't have FBI contacts. I don't, Odetta admitted calmly. She looked across the table at Uncle Ray, who was typing rapidly on his laptop, monitoring the bank servers. But my uncle is a retired forensic auditor for the IRS, and he's currently looking at the metadata of your shell corporation in the Caymans. He's about to hit send on a tip packet to the Federal Cyber Crimes Division. They'll have your face, your alias, and your location in 10 minutes. Wait. Vanessa snapped. Odetta leaned back in the wooden chair, her heart pounding against her ribs, but her voice remained ice-cold. Here is the deal, Vanessa. You want money, but you can't spend money in a federal prison. I know David is at the office right now preparing the transfer. He thinks you're meeting him at the airport. So, you're going to burn him, Odetta said. You're going to burn him, Odetta said. You're going to ghost him. You don't show up. You don't answer his calls. You disappear. If you leave Seattle in the next hour, I'll hold off on sending the file to the FBI for 24 hours. That gives you a head start. If you stay, or if that money leaves the firm's account, I release everything. You go to jail, and David goes to jail. Why would you save the money? Vanessa asked, suspicious. You hate him. Because that money belongs to the clients, Odetta said. And if the firm goes under, the government seizes my assets to pay back the victims. I'm not doing this for the firm. I'm doing it so my son has a roof over his head. Do we have a deal? A pause. Then a low, dark chuckle from the other end. You know, Odetta, you're wasted on him. He told me you were pathetic. He was wrong. Do we have a deal? Odetta repeated. I'm already packing, Vanessa said. Good luck with the husband. Click. Odetta lowered the phone. She let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She's running, Ray asked, not looking up from the screen. She's running, Odetta confirmed. She's a predator. She smells a trap. She leaves. She doesn't care about David. Good, Ray said. But David is still at the office, and he has the override codes. I know, Odetta said. She picked up the phone again. Now I have to call the executioner. She dialed the number for Holloway and Associates. It was 7 p.m. The receptionist would be gone. She dialed the direct line for the senior partner's office. Arthur Sterling was a man who lived for his work. He was 70 years old, terrifying, and treated the law firm like a religion. Sterling, he barked after the second ring. Mr. Sterling, this is Odetta Bennett, David's wife. Odetta. His tone softened slightly, but only just. David isn't here. Well, actually, I think I saw his light on down the hall, but he's not answering his extension. Is everything all right? No, Arthur. It's not, Odetta said. I need you to listen to me very carefully. Do not let David leave the building, and do not let him touch his computer. Excuse me, Sterling bristled. Odetta, I don't get involved in domestic disputes. This isn't domestic. This is criminal, Odetta said. I just emailed you a zip file. It contains 32 spreadsheets found on David's personal hard drive. They detail unauthorized transfers from your client escrow accounts into a shell company called Vaughn Consulting. There was silence on the line. The sound of a mouse clicking. The sound of keys tapping. Then a sharp intake of breath. That's the Henderson account, Sterling whispered, his voice trembling with rage. And the McAllister Trust. He plans to drain the operating account tonight, using your override code, Odetta said. He's leaving the country. My override code. Sterling's voice dropped to a terrifying whisper. The son of a bitch. He's in his office right now, Arthur. He thinks he's about to start a new life. I need you to stop him. Odetta, Sterling said, his voice now composed, cold and lethal. Thank you. I'll handle it, Sterling said, his voice now composed, cold and lethal. Thank you. I'll handle it. One more thing, Arthur, Odetta added. Put me on speaker when you walk in. I want him to know exactly who ended him. David Bennett sat in his corner office, the city lights of Seattle twinkling below him like diamonds. His palms were sweating. His suitcase was hidden under his desk. His passport was in his pocket. He had texted Jessica 3 times. Transfer initiating in 10 mins. Are you at the hangar? No reply. She was probably just already on the plane, he told himself. The signal was bad on the tarmac. He looked at his computer screen. The banking interface for the firm's offshore accounts was open. The transfer amount was entered. $4,200,000. He typed in his password. Then the prompt for the senior partner override. He pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. He had stolen the code from Sterling's desk a week ago, while Sterling was at lunch. AS992Q. He typed it in. His finger hovered over the E-execute button. This was it. No turning back. Once he clicked this, he was a criminal. But he was also free. Free of the crying baby, free of the tired wife, free of the boredom. Goodbye, Odetta, he whispered. He clicked execute. The screen froze. A spinning hourglass appeared. David held his breath. Come on, come on. Suddenly the screen flashed red. ACCDNE. Terminal lockdown initiated. What? David hissed DNE. Terminal lockdown initiated. What? David hissed. He clicked frantically. No, no, no. The screen went black. Then a single line of white text appeared. SEC Security Alert. Unauthorized US. David stood up. David stood up, panic seizing his chest. The system had crashed. Or had he typed the code wrong? He reached for the phone to call IT, to spin some lie about a glitch, when his office door slammed open. David spun around. Arthur Sterling stood in the doorway. He wasn't alone. 2 uniformed police officers stood behind him, along with the firm's head of security. Sterling looked like a thunderstorm contained in a suit. His face was purple with rage. "Arthur?" David stammered, backing up against his desk. I was just working late. The system." "Shut your mouth," Sterling roared. The sound echoed off the glass walls. "You ungrateful, thieving parasite." David's knees went weak. "I don't know what you're talking about." Sterling walked forward and slammed a cell phone onto David's desk. "You have a call," Sterling spat. David looked at the phone. It was on speaker. "Hello, David," a voice said. David froze. It was Odetta. "Odetta," he whispered. "What did you do?" "I did what you couldn't." Odetta's voice filled the room, amplified and crystal clear. "I managed the obligation. You talked to him." David looked at Sterling, then back at the phone. "Odetta, listen. This is a misunderstanding. I was moving the money to protect the firm. There was a hack." "Stop," Odetta cut him off. "I have the hard drive, David. Ray has the spreadsheets. We know about the Cayman accounts. We know about Jessica. Or should I say, Vanessa Kinsley?" David blinked. "Vanessa? She played you, David," Odetta said, her voice dripping with a mix of pity and victory. "She's a con artist. She's wanted in Chicago. She didn't want you. She wanted the access codes. And guess what? She's gone. She's not at the access codes. And guess what? She's gone. She's not at the airport. She's probably halfway to the border by now." David felt the world tilt. "No. She loves me. She said we were real family." Sterling let out a harsh, barking laugh. "Real family? You emptied the McAllister Trust for a woman who doesn't exist? You destroyed your career, your marriage, and your life for a phantom." The police officers stepped forward. "David Bennett," one of them said, pulling out handcuffs. "Stand up and place your hands behind your back." "Odetta!" David screamed at the phone as the cold metal clicked around his wrists. "Odetta, please. Tell them it's a mistake. I'm the father of your child. You can't let them take me." "You made your choice at 2:14 a.m., Odetta said. "You said I was just biology. You said Leo was an obligation." "Well, David, now you have a new obligation. It's called 10 to 15 years for grand larceny." "Odetta, I love you. I'm sorry." David was sobbing now, the facade of the successful lawyer crumbling into a terrified mess. "Goodbye, David," Odetta said. Click, the line went dead. Sterling nodded to the officers. "Get him out of my sight." As they dragged David out of the office, past the empty cubicles of the colleagues he had betrayed, he didn't look like a mastermind. He looked small. Back in the cabin in Oregon, Odetta hung up the phone. She looked at Leo, who was awake now, blinking his large eyes at the firelight. She didn't feel happy. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt exhausted. But as she looked at her son, she felt something else. She felt light, the weight of the lie she had been living with for years. The feeling that she wasn't enough, that he was drifting away, was gone. The truth was out. The rot had been cut away. "Ideally," Ray said, closing his laptop. "We should have gotten the Mistress too." "We will," Odetta said, staring into the fire. "But for now, I'm just glad she's gone." She picked up Leo and kissed his forehead. "We're safe," she whispered. "And we're safe," she whispered. "And we're free." 6 months had passed since the night the world ended on 42nd Avenue. Seattle had turned from the gray drizzle of spring to the crisp, burning gold of autumn. The federal courthouse in downtown Seattle was a fortress of concrete and glass, a place where libs were reduced to docket numbers and sentencing guidelines. Inside courtroom 4B, the air was stale, recycled, and heavy with the scent of floor wax and despair. Odetta Bennett sat in the back row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She wasn't wearing the yoga pants and stained sweatshirts of her past life. She wore a tailored navy blazer and dark jeans, her hair cut into a sharp, confident bob. Beside her sat Uncle Ray, who had traded his fishing vest for a charcoal suit that smelled faintly of mothballs. In the front of the room, David Bennett sat alone at the defense table. He looked like a ghost of the man who had once commanded boardrooms. His custom-tailored suits were gone, replaced by an ill-fitting orange jumpsuit that pulled round his ankles. His posture, usually arrogant and upright, was slumped. He had lost weight 20 pounds at least, and his skin had the pallor of someone who hadn't seen direct sunlight in months. He hadn't turned around to look at Odetta. Not once. The Honourable Judge Marcus Thorne adjusted his glasses and looked down at the pile of paperwork before him. He was a man known for his disdain for white-collar crime, and today he looked particularly unimpressed. "Mr. Bennett," Judge Thorne's voice boomed, cutting through the murmurs of the gallery. "You stand before this court convicted of 14 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, and conspiracy to commit embezzlement. You abused your position of trust as a partner at Holloway & Associates. You stole from widows, trusts, and families who believed you were their protector." David's lawyer, a court-appointed public defender named Mr. Klein, because David's assets were frozen and he couldn't afford private counsel, stood up. "Your Honor, my client was under extreme duress. He was manipulated by a professional con artist. He has cooperated fully since his arrest." "Cooperated?" the judge scoffed. "He cooperated only after his wife, the true victim here, handed the evidence to his superiors on a silver platter. Mr. Bennett, do you have anything to say?" David stood up slowly. His chains rattled a hollow metallic sound that echoed in the silence. "I..." David's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. "I just wanted a different life. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I was confused." Odetta felt a surge of bile rise in her throat. Even now, facing prison, he couldn't take responsibility. He was confused. He didn't mean to. It was the same passive language he used when he forgot their anniversary or missed a doctor's appointment. "The court is not moved by your confusion," Judge Thorne said coldly. "You liquidated a trust fund meant for a disabled child. You attempted to flee the country while your newborn son slept in your home. You are not a victim, Mr. Bennett. You are a predator who got caught." The gavel raised. Odetta held her breath. "I sentence you to 12 years in a federal penitentiary, to be served consecutively. You are also ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $4.2 million. Bang. The sound of the gavel was final. It was the period at the end of a long, painful sentence. As the bailiffs moved in to take David away, he finally turned. He looked past the reporters, past his weeping mother in the second row, and locked eyes with Odetta. His eyes were wide, pleading. He mouthed one word. "Odetta." Odetta didn't look away. She didn't cry. She simply nodded, a slow, deliberate acknowledgement of his fate. She watched as the man who had called her an obligation was handcuffed and led out through the side door, disappearing into the system that would consume the next decade of his life. "It's over," Ray whispered, placing a heavy hand on her shoulder. "Not quite," Odetta said, her voice steady. "There's still one loose end." They walked out of the courthouse into the blinding afternoon sun. Reporters swarmed, microphones thrust forward like spears. "Mrs. Bennett, do you have a comment on your husband's sentencing? Odetta, is it true you wiretapped him? What will happen to the money?" Odetta ignored them all. She put on her sunglasses and walked toward her car. But as she reached the curb, a black sedan pulled up. The window rolled down. It was Arthur Sterling. The senior partner looked tired, but he offered Odetta a grim smile. "Justice was served, Odetta." "It was, Arthur," she replied. "I wanted you to know," Sterling said, lowering his voice. "We recovered about 80% of the funds. The insurance covered the rest. The firm will survive. And we'd set up a trust for Leo. Consider it an apology for not seeing what David was sooner." Odetta was stunned. "Arthur, you don't have to." "I do," he interrupted. "You saved my firm. It's the least I can do." He handed her a manila envelope. Also, you might find this interesting. It's from the Mexican authorities. The car drove away. Odetta stood on the sidewalk and opened the envelope. Inside was a mugshot. It was Vanessa Kinsley, or Jessica, or whatever name she was using that week. She didn't look like the glamorous femme fatale anymore. Her hair was matted, her makeup smeared, and she sported a split lip. Attached was a police report translated from Spanish. Suspect apprehended in Mexico City attempting to withdraw funds from a flagged account. Suspect claims she was tipped off by an anonymous source but was intercepted at the bank. Odetta smiled. The anonymous source. That night in the cabin, Odetta hadn't just called the FBI. She had sent a text to David's phone, which she knew Vanessa had access to, warning her that the accounts were frozen. It was a bluff. The accounts weren't frozen yet. But Odetta knew Vanessa's greed. She knew Vanessa would rush to an ATM or a bank branch to test the card, to try and get cash before the freeze hit. And that specific action accessing the banking network from a foreign IP address was exactly what triggered the real freeze and alerted the Mexican police to her location. Odetta had used Vanessa's own greed as the bait. "She's in custody," Odetta told Ray, showing him the photo. "Extradition starts Monday." "You're terrifying," Ray laughed, shaking his head. "Remind me never to cross you." Odetta looked at the city skyline for the first time in months. The crushing weight on her chest was gone. She thought about the night she spent crying in the nursery, wondering why she wasn't enough. She thought about the fear of being a single mother, of being broke, of being alone. But she wasn't alone. She had Ray, she had Maggie, and most importantly, she had Leo. She drove to the small rental house she had moved into near the Sound. It wasn't a mansion. It had creaky floors and the drafty window, but it was hers. She walked inside. Her sister Maggie was on the floor, building a tower of blocks with Leo. Leo looked up, his face breaking into a toothless, joyous grin. He crawled toward her, babbling a sound that sounded suspiciously like Mama. Odetta picked him up, burying her face in his neck, breathing in the scent of baby powder and hope. David was in a cell. Vanessa was in chains, and Odetta was holding her world in her arms. "We did it, Leo," she whispered into his soft hair. We walked away. She wasn't the victim of a tragedy. She was the architect of her own rescue, and as the sun set over the water, painting the sky in violent, beautiful shades of purple and orange, Odetta Bennett finally knew the truth. She was never just an obligation. She was the storm. And that, my friends, is where we leave Odetta and David. It's a brutal, beautiful reminder that underestimate a mother at your own peril. David thought he was discarding a burden. Instead, he was arming an adversary. He traded a loyal partner for a prison sentence, and a son for a memory. Odetta's story isn't just about revenge. It's about the terrifying clarity that comes when you realize the person supposed to protect you is actually the danger. She didn't just survive. She outsmarted two master manipulators at their own game. It makes you wonder how many other silent partners are out there, just waiting for the right moment to strike back. If Odetta's savage takedown gave you chills, do me a huge favor, hit that like button right now. It helps more people find these stories. What do you think about the ending? Did David get what he deserved, or was 12 years too light? And did you expect the twist with the Mistress? Let's talk about it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a saga. I've got a story coming up next week about a lottery winner whose family tried to have him committed. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and trust your gut.